Hello, everybody. This is Steve, coming to you with a much promised intro to Earthfleet. Specifically starting with the Orc Perimeter, because that one is what kicked off the entire Earthfleet universe. To give you kind of an overview, Orc Perimeter, it was the first one of the Earthfleet books I wrote. I did some experimenting with it. I Personally, from my perspective, I mean, everybody loves it the way I did it, but from my perspective, I think I kind of overreached a little. I made it work. It was successful, but I think I kind of overreached a little with the book because I was introducing tons of characters at the time, which I've learned since then you kind of feed them in more gradually than I did with this one. This one was kind of like, back up the dump truck and drop it all on your face. But again, it's not bad. I did it very, very successfully, and I had reviewers who agreed with the same thing. They were impressed with how well I pulled that off. I'm kind of impressed with how well I pulled that off. And that's not to brag or anything. That's just basically detailing what it was that I did, and the fact that I managed to do it successfully. Now I can't say like, oh yeah, first novel and I did this successfully. No. As I said in my other video, I've done like 45 different books of various sizes, from short stories, novelettes, full-size novels and stuff. The ones that actually hung around, you didn't start, though that didn't really start happening until you got to Orc Perimeter, Land of the Lions, stuff like that. The other ones were, I wrote it, I completed it, I handed it out, everybody read it, they critiqued it, I tossed it away, went on to the next book. So like I say, they didn't start sticking around until I had friends talking me into, or until my friends talked me into actually publishing. So, but anyways, with Orc Perimeter, Orc Perimeter is Orc Perimeter is the first book in the Earthfleet universe. The Earthfleet universe came about through an idea that I got in my head, which was the Sergenius, and I can show you that here. There it is. The Sergenius is it's a Corvette, is what it's classified as. It's a Corvette with the attitude of a battleship, or at least a battle cruiser. It's based loosely around the design of the SR-71, and going back here again, as I mentioned before, like with the SR-71, the engines are on the outboard. Well, these are more inboard. I once had a better image of this, but that got lost when my wiki died last time. I had to go. I actually built my wiki up, got all my stuff up to what it was current at the time, and then I had an unfortunate data loss and lost everything. So I had to start from scratch. I had a friend of mine who was nice enough to do a blueprint scratch outline of roughly what the ship looks like, and this is what it is. And the Sergenius is a type of ship called a ship killer. The reason behind that name is this little itty-bitty frigate, 9-man crew, is designed to go up against a full-size battle cruiser and win. We're not talking frigates, we're not talking destroyers, we're talking battle cruisers. This is like, to use an analogy that I think a lot of you would know, would be like the Defiant going up against one of the great big capital ships in Star Trek and actually winning by the skin of its teeth, but still winning. That same idea. And the reason for these ships is that Earthfleet, just like the Society, always suffers from personnel shortages, because they're very particular on who they select. And they're not a big organization. They don't have a lot of people in their group to begin with. So they're always having to induct people and basically go out, find somebody, bring them in, train them up, teach them how to live, breathe, and work inside of society, Brayburn Society, otherwise known as the Society. How to live inside a society, or the culture of the Society, how to live in Earthfleet if they're taken into the fleet itself, and things like that. So the ship killers came about as an idea that how do we get starships with a lot of firepower, but they have small crews, so we're not constantly running short on people, which even with the ship killers are still constantly running short on people. It takes them a long time before they finally rectify that, and even then they're still always running short on people, so they're always thinking in degrees of efficiency on everything that they do. And the search engine, like I say, is a ship killer, and ship killer is a unofficial class of ship that basically is a nod to the fact that they're designed to take on much, much bigger ships and win. One-to-one, toe-to-toe. You put 3 of these up against a cruiser, and that cruiser's just going to die. You put it up against a battleship, the battleship might walk away, because battleships are essentially a battle cruiser times 3. So you'd end up back to the same pairing of 1-to-1 of battleship or battlecruiser to ship killer. So 3 of those could take on, 3 of them will just obliterate a cruiser, but they would have kind of a tough fight against a battleship. And that, and it sounds like, well, that's overkill. Well, you got to consider, you got these great big republics, and I'll show you that in a second, but you got these great big alien republics with millions of capital ships, and then you've got people who are with the local mafia, the Junah, and you've got unaffiliated people, and basically Earth is one planet with limited resources to defend itself against a whole galaxy of races. In the Earthfleet universe, there are thousands of races. I don't specify exactly how many thousands, but it's easily well above 2,000 different races. And there's 9 of them that are huge. And let me get in here and intro that to you. These guys here are the core of the universe. They're 9 individual societies. They're either republics or empires or confederacies. And they're called the 9 ancient races, not because they're the 9 oldest races or the 9 first to space. They're the 9 biggest. And there was, about 2,000 years ago, according to the storyline, there was this great big War of the 9, which is a misnomer because there was actually 15 great big races. There were 15 races that were just exactly like these guys. So it was these guys and 6 others. And they just basically had this great big knockdown drag out. And of that, at the end of that war, there was only 9 of them left. So 6 of those big super republics got exterminated, not wiped out, not knocked down, exterminated. So they don't exist anymore. I haven't determined if they started the fight or they just kind of got on the bad end of the whole ordeal. That was not something that's not something I've had to actually develop yet. But anyways, these guys ended up. They led to the formation of the UGW, or the United Galactic Worlds, which is kind of like the Galactic UN for this universe. Works and functions kind of in the same way. And when the peace treaties were all signed, they each had roughly equal amounts of galactic space, which actually worked out because the way their home world and their central republics and empires and stuff are situated, it creates this almost perfect pinwheel effect around the center of the galaxy, with each one having about an equal amount of space in their republic, which was part of the treaty when the war ended, and so that everybody was happy with what they got, so there would hopefully not be another race like that, because there was also a lot of the intermediate and minor races that got wiped out or heavily wounded and stuff in the process of this. That I'm eventually going to cover, I think, more of the details on that war in a later book. Right now it's just kind of back history to explain where they came from and why they are the way they are. Of the 9 races, there's the Yedish, the Angolorians, the Trepidor, the Trigarians, the Varnock, Gaekfon, Yandians, Gaedal, and Pront. In Book 1, the ones you run into first are the Gaekfon. The genesis idea for this race, ironically enough, was I thought, okay, where is Earth located at? It was one of the 6 W's that you ask yourself as a writer. I was like, okay, where is Earth located? Well, I thought, okay, it's going to be in the middle of this big republic. And I was thinking it'd be bad if it was in a hostile republic, something that would be hostile to Earth, because Earth really can't defend itself. They lean very heavily on the Geek Von for the big stuff. The little stuff they can handle, the big stuff they lean on the Geek Von, because the Geek Von have the ships and the firepower. The Geek Von is also very, very friendly to the minor races that are within their borders. They realize, that, hey, it's no fault of yours that you're here. You're small. You're not really a threat to us, but we're going to be nice to you. And we're going to take care of you, and because that way we don't have to worry about you turning around stabbing us in the back and stuff. So it's good politics, basically. And plus the Geek Von are nice people anyways. And, one of the things about sci-fi is that in sci-fi, typically the reptilian species are the bad guys. And I thought, why don't we flip this on its head and make them the good guys? And not just make them good guys, make them really good guys. You've got your arrogant people within there. You've got the people that are power hungry and stuff. That's just the typical, social structure of any race or republic or anything like that. But in general, they are, for the most part, good people. And Vasin, who's an adjutant president, and to understand that, you have to realize that in the Geek Von Republic, they have the president who presides over everything. Under him, he has 4 vice presidents. And then under them, there is 10 adjutant presidents. Vasin is an adjutant president so that and he's designated that way by the president of the Geek Von Republic, because that way he's not so high that he gets tangled up in all the politics and becomes kind of useless. He ends up just being a figurehead. The president wants him at a level that's high enough where he's got the authority, but low enough that he doesn't get sucked into all of the politics and becomes neutered, basically. Or neutered politically and socially and stuff like that. So he's not, and he can't be effective for the Republic. And the president of that time, basically, his 10 adjutants are just like Vasin. They each are off doing their own little thing. And like I say, they're high enough up that they are able to do things, but they're not high enough that they become mired in the political quagmire that exists really in any large republic or empire or kingdom or whatever. Let's see here. So yeah, if you want to read more, you can go up into the wiki and get to that right from my website. As I mentioned in the last video, that is realmsofimagination.net. Now, as I had mentioned earlier, I'll get that in a second. In the first book of the 9 races, there's really only 5 in the local area that Earthfleet has to deal with. And the other ones are far enough on the other side of the universe that you kind of interact with them occasionally. But in general, you don't. They're just kind of there, and they do. Different members of 9 do intermingle with each other, so you will get to experience most of the different races, or most of the members of the 9, but not all of them. But anyways, the big enemy, the visible enemy. There's one that runs under the surface too that's controlling the visible enemy. But in the original book, the visible enemy is the Varnock. And they are a snotty, nasty, ugly fishman species. And what's funny about them is, they're what, at the beginning of the Oort Perimeter, you learn that there is this division within the 9 where 5 of the 9 races side with Earth, which is hilarious because we're this little zit in the middle of nowhere in the galaxy. We're a nobody, but somebody has come in and turned us into the hot button political and social issue of the galaxy, which is explained further in the book. I'm not going to tell you much more on that, but basically we're used as a pivot point for somebody doing big political maneuvers, and they end up splitting up the 9. So instead of them all being united, there's 5 against 4. And the Varnock is one of the leading races is the main race that leads the 4 that turn against the other 5. So in that respect, Earth is still protected because the Geek Von and their allies have the majority by one race, yes, but it's still a majority. And they, even 2,000 years later, the Great War of the Nine is still very vivid in their minds. So they're very much like, yeah, let's not step over that proverbial line and go back to what we did, because it's been 2,000 years, but we still remember the horrors of that. That information was reinforced throughout history in their different republics to make sure that that didn't happen again. And the UGW is always kind of beating on that to make sure that didn't happen again. And they put in all of these little fail safes to make sure it didn't happen again. Because if it does, there's a good chance that the 9 ancient races might become the 5 ancient races. If you get my meaning, just like the 15 became the 9. And they're just like, yeah, let's not let that happen. So, anyways, one of the other races that you'll run into in that book, among these, is the Yandians. Now, I will tell you something interesting about them. The Yandians are the librarians of the galaxy. They're information nerds. Their name and their species, well, more their species than anything, is actually a pun, and you'll see why here in a sec. They're anthropomorphic tabby cats. They're information nerds. The idea here comes from the pun, curiosity killed the cat. So that was the pun that actually spawned the Yandians. Yandians, like I say, they're information nerds. Information is their life. And, all that information they have, people will look at that and go, man, that's super valuable. Yeah, it is. But at the same time, be careful what you wish for, because since they know so much information, they also know every single thing about you. Because if you think about it, where the Yandians are located, they've got the Angolorians, which are, I would say they're like the wolf equivalent to the Klingons. And, or no, not the Klingons, excuse me. Well, I guess Klingon would probably be the closest one. They're very warlike. They're, they follow kind of the wolf mentality and the pack and all of that stuff. And I'll show you them here. Angolorians right there. Yeah, they're very wolf-like. But they're also, like I say, if you looked at them and their behavior and how they dress and stuff, you might mistake them for Romans in wolf costumes, because that's, that's their mentality. And the Yandian, or the Angolorians, are to the galactic north of Yandian space. To the galactic south is the Varnock. And to the galactic northeast of Angolorian space is the Pront. So this kind of creates a balancing thing that if the Angolorians go after the Yandians, the Pront will go after them, so now they're fighting a two-front war. Same thing with like the Yandians and the Geik-Van. They could go against the Varnock, but then they've got to deal with the Trigarians and the Angolorians, and so on and so forth. So the way the different alliances are and who's who really kind of just is what's helped keep the galaxy in balance, because it's you pick a fight with one person, you're going to pick a fight with a second person. Now you're fighting a two-front war, but they're only fighting one-front wars. They might end up fighting a two-front war, but that's not likely. And like I said, that fear of getting into that pincer position is a bad thing. And then the fact that the Yandians know so much, your chances of sneaking in and a surprise attacking them and actually having all of your battle tactics work and everything is really slim to none, because the Yandians have collected pretty much every bit of knowledge in the galaxy. There are no secrets with them. They won't share them for the sake of peace, but if you're stupid enough to attack the Yandians, they've got everything they need to beat you handily. Just hand you your butt on a platter with a side of ketchup, Among some of the others in the universe is, like I was mentioning, the Trigarians. They're tiger-like. They're similar to the Angolorians, but they have a little bit different battle ethos, a different way of doing things. I'm trying to think of a good example of what, of somebody. That's what it was. Yeah, they're more like the Russians in a sense of how they function, how they think. Very tiger-like in their thinking and lifestyle and everything like that. But they would be more comparable to like the Russians and how they function. It's still a very scary group of people, scary race to work with, because they, when they go into the fight, they go in to win, and they will throw everything to the wind and come away completely exterminated. But you're also going to come away beat 6 ways into Tuesday. They may lose, but you're not going to walk away from that one with untouched. You're going to walk away from that one wondering what the heck walked into the room and beat the snot out of you. Now here's another race that is a pun. Is the Yiddish. They are essentially gigantic Yeti or Bigfoots, and hence the name Yiddish. You don't see them much in the story. The only place you really get any taste of who and what they are is in what's the book? The Weaver's Forge, because you meet Hector and Drod. Hector's a head monk. Drod is he's with the Akura Kim, which is essentially kind of the same thing as a Shaolin monk. So he's a battling monk, martial arts expert. You get a little taste of them. There's the Gay Doll. They're best friends with the Yiddish, and they're a rabbit-like race. Oh, probably about 3-4 feet tall, not terribly big. But yeah, they're essentially a rabbit race. You run into them in Weaver's Forge through one of the characters who's a Red Paladin. And as you get into the series more, you figure out what the Red Paladins are. But they're a special forces group that serves the Nuitians, and the Nuitians are a whole other animal all their own. I can cover them at another time. Yidal, Prant, Trepidor. That was another one. Like the Trepidor is another interesting race because they're an avianoid race that is essentially gigantic sentient herons. Nan is the only one of that group that I've actually covered. Oops, see if I can make him a little bigger for you. Nan is a diplomat, and this would be like his typical outfit, where he has his wings. His wings are under his cloak, even though his cloak looks like a wing, which for their society that's a completely normal thing, because they're birds, so they're going to have a lot of avian styles and other things like that. Which is kind of touched on here. Like with this one, the wing is up underneath the cloak, and you see the feathers on the cloak and the wing design and stuff. But yeah, they're basically sentient heron, but they're a really cool race. You run into them too, I think, in what is it, Dark Earth. You run into them a little bit through Nan. In the Earthfleet series, you run into a little bit with them in Dark Earth. I haven't done... sorry, being yawny. I haven't done much with them yet, but I haven't needed to, because I'm still kind of working out from the core of around where Earth is at, out into the other parts of the galaxy, because I still have to work with the Prant. I need more with the Yiddish and Gay Doll. The Trepidor... Let's just say this much: they're not imposing in hand-to-hand battle, but the Targaryens are absolutely terrified of them. They are straight up terrified of the Trepidor, because where the Trepidor don't have a good, they're not physically built for hand-to-hand combat like the Targaryens are. But you stick them out in a starship or a fighter or some kind of aircraft, or anything that deals with the air, these guys are frickin' brutal. They are, they would take the Targaryen fleet and just eat it for breakfast. But they're not warlike. They're actually very peaceful, which is the only thing that saved the Targaryen Republic from getting, or well, actually, I shouldn't call it a republic. It's an empire. It's kept them from being exterminated, because The Targaryens figured that out pretty quickly in the War of the Nine, that the Trepidar aren't a race to be messed with. So, and I got to do more to, explore them in later books, but they're a fun one to work with. And the Pront are also funny. They're mentioned, but you don't hear much on them, and I haven't done much with them, but they're eventually going to be dealt with. They're a semi-humanoid race that is very, very arrogant. The funny part is they're sandwiched between the Angolorians and the Yiddish. So, they don't have to worry about the Yiddish. Yiddish are cool dudes, so they don't have to worry about the Yiddish. But the Angolorians, they have to worry about them. And if the Angolorians get out of line, they'll keep the Angolorians in line, but the Angolorians will also keep them in line. So, the whole galaxy is kind of self-balancing for the most part, which is nice. It keeps people out of trouble, keeps the galaxy from descending into war, which it almost does a couple times during the Earthfleet saga in the later books. But they're the foundation of the galaxy. They're the 9 biggest players in the galaxy. They have their own kind of like let's see, in the United Nations they have the what is it? It's the one that Russia, China, USA sits on, all the big superpowers, like the Defense Council or something like that. But anyways, they have kind of their own equivalent of that, which is the Council of 9. It's 9 representatives from all 9 races who basically hash out any problems that they have between themselves, or if there's problems in the galaxy, they'll go work together and brainstorm and try to solve problems. So it's a smaller version of what is done in the UGW, focusing just on the 9 to try to keep things, try to keep a lid on this fire that's in the galaxy, basically. Because it's one of those things that it's a piece, but it's a thin piece, or very, very thin, or thin veneer of a piece. So they're always working to try and keep that piece, because they don't want to go back and do a second War of the 9. Because, like I said, it would probably end up being the 5 ancient races when all was said and done. So, anyhow, here's the UGW. This one was actually modeled after another universe that I had been working with for a long time. And I didn't copy it over verbatim. I took bits and pieces of that universe that I liked a lot. I never actually wrote anything on that one. That was just one where I was going out and brainstorming and trying ideas and stuff, but never actually wrote books and stories on it. It was an idea pool and a place to try things out. And I ended up with the membership structure. In the UGW, you have trade partnership. It's basically, we have a treaty with you. You can come in and trade, but you're not a member. Treaty ally, you're still not a member, but you are an ally through treaty, through a contract. So this one allows you to trade. This one, you are like a military ally. Treaty member that's the lowest rank you can be as far as the UGW goes. You're kind of in the door, but at the bottom level. Charter member, you get all the privileges of membership in the UGW, but you're not actually a citizen of the UGW. That's what the last one is. The last one this isn't for republics and empires and stuff. The last one is for individuals who have no allegiances up here, or they want to have allegiance with the UGW as a citizen. So the UGW is like the UN, but then it has its own citizens. So it's kind of a hybrid in a sense. Then there's a lot of other stuff you run into in this galaxy. Like I mentioned, the Junah. The Junah is a multi-species galactic mafia. They're spread across the galaxy, but their primary area of operation is in the Alpha Quadrant. And it was the Junah that initially brought Earth into the galactic, the galaxy itself, as far as their participation, interaction with it, and stuff like that. Because up till then, everybody who went by looked at Earth and they're primitive. They don't have FTL technology. They don't have space travel. So we'll just leave them alone. Gagavon kind of watched over them and, watched over Earth, made sure Earth was fine and nobody was picking on him and stuff. And, just Earth was a nobody. People knew about it. I mean, it was something that was taught in their schools. It was discussed in their politics from time to time. But it was really one of those, we were more a footnote than we were anything. There was no thought or real concern for us. It was just, we're there. We're a thing. Well, in First Dawn, the Society, before the birth of Earthfleet, sends out a starship to do some exploring in the solar system. And they run into Lord Zagard, who was one of the 8 Junah lords of the time. And he kidnaps them, and then he kidnaps them and wrecks their ship, so then they have to go and rebuild the ship, and they come back with... and I'm oversimplifying that. There's way more going on there, because there's politics and... there's galactic politics. There's the war within the Junah. There's the rivalries, and there's just so much stuff. And you get to see a different side of the Yandians. You get to see more of the Red Paladins and the Noetians. You get to see the early years of Shanomar, because you run into Shanomar in the regular series. Because he's the general in charge of the Red Paladins, and you see him when he's a field operative in that book. Like I say, Edmund and his crew go out. They have to completely rebuild their ship from the bottom up, because everything that they went out with, all of their low end technology, got gutted or got burned out, and wrecked and trashed, so it wasn't usable anymore. So they gut it out, and they go out, buy some civilian market warp drives and shields and some other stuff like that, and fly back to Earth, and then that spawns the Destiny class, and I'll show you that here. There we go. This right here is I can't remember the series, but it was one of the classic series from like 1940, 1950, something like that. It was Flash Gordon. That's what it was. And how he had his rocket ship that was similar to this. And this picture here is not a true proper representation, but it's the best one I've been able to find so far. The Destiny is a really small ship. It's got a crew of 30. It's initially its flight power is with repulsor rails. Powered by a quantum or a vacuum energy reactor, and it's got some high-end technology in it, but high-end from the human perspective. As far as the galaxy is concerned, just things like like a caveman with a rock beating on or caveman with a stick beating on a rock. So it's very low-end tech as far as the rest of the galaxy is concerned, but it's very high-end for the society at the time. And they go out and they're running around, and it's doing some exploring. It's got Starlock navigation. It uses radar to look ahead. Has no artificial gravity, no shields. You've got 30 crew members working 3 shifts, and they're packed in like sardines. So, so you got 15 bunks and 30 crew members. So, yeah, you're sharing bunk space. It's only 2 decks. It's the upper deck, which is the living space, which doesn't say a whole lot, and then you got the lower section, which is primarily engineering with the bunk room and the back here, the back half of the ship is all engineering. Down here, you've got your your supplies, your food, your water. You've got your bunks up above. You got your showers, different things like that. So it's a ship you can live in, but it's not very. How do I say this? It's not very high tech by galactic standards. Well, when they come back, now the ship's warp powered. It's got shields. It's got turrets. It's got torpedoes. It's been greatly upgraded. And then this leads to, because you should see this is the original. This is after the refit, and then it gets one more refit later on with some welcome improvements. It actually gets some armor plating for a change. A lot of it's like class 2, Class 3 shuttle, stuff like that. Shuttle basically being, just it's the stuff you would use on a shuttlecraft, not a full-size ship like the Destiny. So it's kind of a little underarmed for what it is, but considering what the ship is, that's really the best you're going to get for it. There are 4 ships in that class, and each one's kind of funny because it's the 4 ships are not identical to each other. They have the basic space frame, but what they're doing is the Society's doing and eventually the Society Space Corps, which is spun off from the Society, as I mentioned before. That they spin off the Destiny and a bunch of the scientists associated with them, and they create the Society Space Corps, and it's like, we'll keep doing our thing, you do your thing, and we'll all be happy. And that's more just to give the Space Corps the freedom to do what they need to take advantage of this technology and integrate it back into society life and society and Earth technology and stuff like that, but also allow them to step forward, advance, and grow and stuff. So they're the 4 Destiny class are made with common market parts. Basically, you go around to the local market, you buy a warp drive, you buy your spare parts, you buy your freighter shielding or whatever you happen to have on your ship. You buy it from the common market, and then they fit the ship. The first ship after this is the Stellar class. And this isn't a perfect representation. You'll find that when you go through here that some of them are pretty close, some of them not so close. This is the closest I could find. The way I actually picture it in my mind is like an F1 race car, but without the wheels. And like I say, this is the closest I could come up with to it. The hilarious part about it is it's a little Corvette class ship. It's bigger than the Destiny, better armed, but it's also it's got about 30 or 45 crew. Yeah, I'd have to look that up. 45 crew. So I was right. So half again as many crew, less internal space for the actual crew to live. So it's real cozy in there. Kind of the submarine idea where you're living in a great big pressure vessel, but there's barely any room to move around and live in, work in, and you just kind of have to make do, because there's just really not much space in the ship for you to live. And that's the Stellar class is the first actual Society / Earth built starship other than the Destiny class, but it's the first one that's actually warp powered. Basically, by the time they build the Stellar class, and they build 16 of these to help out the Destiny class with protecting Earth. That class is the first one that's actually built from scratch. With all of the modern accoutrements that are available to the civilian market, so they're not like military. It's not a military grade vessel. It's a well-armed civilian vessel on steroids, which a normal military grade combat vessel would just eat for breakfast. But anyways, the Stellar class is built after reverse engineering everything that they've pulled in from the galaxy, the warp drives, the shields, all this stuff. They've reverse engineered them. They've learned how they're made. They've learned how they work, and then they build it themselves. And that sits alongside the Destiny class until the what was the other one that came up? Titan class. That's what it was. Until the Titan class comes along, and the Titan class is what is the actual sort of genesis or initiator of the creation of Earthfleet, because the Society Space Corps, if you want to think of it like in Revolutionary War era, U.S. Revolutionary War era, like fighting forces and stuff, the Destiny class are kind of the farmers with muskets. The Stellar class is the Minutemen. They're good woodsmen. They've got some combat training. They know how to fight guerrilla style, skirmish style. They don't do great big military maneuvers and formations and campaigns and stuff like that. That's not how they're trained. They're the guys that run around and nip at your heels all the time. Then the minor background, I'll give you kind of the dime tour here, but basically the Geekvon created the Yavlik class, and the Yavlik was one of their absolute best destroyers of that time period. It was very reliable. It needed very little upkeep, very little maintenance. And it performed amazingly well. It served for about 350 years, and then it was retired because it became obsolete. And the funny thing was, it became obsolete so fast that since the Geekvon tend to run their ships from launch to decommissioning about 150 years, when it came to the end of its life, it only had about 20 years from the last ship that left space dock or the construction yards till the class was completely decommissioned. And they did that mostly because the advances in the new class of destroyer were so far ahead that there was no reason to take those now no longer frontline destroyers and turn them into training ships. They just said, we'll just scrap them. Well, they had a bunch of them that were like only 20 years old at the time, and some that were like 30 or 40. They were still really good ships. They were still in great condition, and they would be good for some of their internal neighbors, the smaller republics and single planet societies like Earth and stuff. So what Earth did was they got 16 of these ships, and they got the ones that were the newest, the ones that were 20 years old. Some of the others, they got the 30, 40, 50-year-old ones, 70-year-old ones, which, even saying a 70-year-old Yavlik class is, that you're not really giving them like this geriatric old ship. It's actually still a very viable ship. So you're just not giving them the newest ones. But yeah, they gifted them 16 of these ships. The problem is that the Geekvon is a very populous society. There is plenty of cannon fodder to go around, if you will. And so their ships are very crew heavy. Earthfleet, well, actually the Society Space Corps, their ships are very crew light. Okay, yeah, you're shoving 45 people into a tin cannon that was the Stellar class or 30 into the Destiny class, but still, that's not a lot of people per ship. And you get into something like the Titan class, which was just a massive upgrade, and it is a big ship too, big ship, heck of a fighter, a really good. It's a really good picket ship. It's a good frontline combat ship in support of cruisers and battleships. It's good as a patrol ship. It's just good all around. And one of the other problems that they had when they started giving these ships away was because of the reliability of the Yavlik class. They had planned for a whole bunch of spare parts for these ships as they would need repairs along the way from battle, just stuff wearing out, things like that. Well, they went along the lines roughly of what their other destroyers were doing, and backstocked about that many spare parts, expecting the class to last a certain amount of time and then be decommissioned. Well, they were so reliable that when they got done at the end of that 350 year run, they still had most of their spare parts. I mean, that's how durable and reliable these ships were. And so Earthfleet got a ton. I mean, they got so many spare parts, they could have built another 16 Yavlik class if they wanted to, and still had a lot of spare parts left over. But anyways, that's, that hasn't been covered yet. That's coming up. That's all going to be covered in detail in an upcoming Earthfleet novel that's going to cover the period after First Dawn, when the Society Space Corps is getting its feet under it, and so forth and so on. And I think I'm going to cut my intro short here. I'm at 45 minutes, and I'm just scratching the surface of what's out there. And and if you think these are spoilers, they're not. I'm being, I'm just very lightly brushing on the surface of everything that's in there. So I'll leave you at this. We'll come back and we'll touch on more of the world. There's the monastic order of the Yib. There is all these, there's other races that are important. They're minor races, but they're important. Also kind of the backstory of Earthfleet and where they are in the galaxy at that time and other things like that. So anyways, I'll see you guys in the next video, and if you have any questions, comments, concerns, you can either check out my wiki or leave something in the comments, and see you guys in the next video.